9 true scary gas station horror stories. There's something about gas stations at night that just doesn't sit right with most people. Maybe it's the isolation, the way the fluorescent lights buzz in the dark, the way sound seems to carry farther than it should when there's nothing else around. Or maybe it's the simple fact that when you're at a gas station, especially a remote one, you're vulnerable. Your car is stopped, you're out in the open, and anyone who happens to pull up next to you, well, you don't know them. You don't know where they've been. You don't know what they want. Tonight, I have 9 stories for you. 9 accounts from real people who stopped at a gas station and left with something they never asked for. A memory that still wakes them up at night. Some of these people were alone. Some had people with them. None of them were prepared for what happened. Turn the lights down, get comfortable, and whatever you do, don't go out for gas tonight. Story 1. The Man at Pump 7. Cole was 23 years old the night this happened. He was driving back from visiting his cousin who lived about 4 hours away in rural Tennessee, a stretch of highway that's mostly dark fields, tree lines, and the occasional farmhouse. He'd left his cousin's place later than he planned, and by the time he realized he was running on fumes, it was just past midnight. He pulled off the highway at an exit he didn't recognize. The sign said there was a gas station about a quarter mile up the road, and sure enough, he saw the glow of the lights from the road. The place was called Henny's Stop, one of those old, locally owned stations that look like they haven't been updated since the 80s. 2 pump islands, a small attached convenience store, a hand-painted sign in the window advertising boiled peanuts. Cole pulled up to Pump 3. He was the only car there, or so he thought. He got out, swiped his card, and started filling up. The night air was thick and humid, the kind of southern heat that doesn't really let up even after dark. He leaned against his car and looked around. Fields on one side, trees on the other. The highway was barely visible from where he stood, just the orange glow in the sky from passing headlights. Then he noticed the car at Pump 7. It was a dark green sedan, old, maybe a late 90s model, the kind of car that's so common it's practically invisible. The engine was off. No one was at the pump. Cole assumed someone was inside the store, so he didn't think much of it. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling while the gas pumped. But after a minute, something made him look up again. He wasn't sure what it was. Maybe a sound, maybe just a feeling. When he did look up, there was a man standing at the front of the green sedan, just standing there. Not pumping gas, not walking toward the store, just standing completely still in the shadow at the edge of the pump island's light, staring at Cole. Cole's first instinct was to look away. He did. He stared at his phone, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and when he glanced up again 30 seconds later, the man had moved. He was now standing between the 2 pump islands, maybe 15 feet from Cole, still staring. The man was tall, probably 6'2", 6'3", wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low. Cole couldn't see his face clearly from where he was standing. The man hadn't said a word. Cole's gas pump clicked off. He grabbed the nozzle, put it back in the holder, and started to get into his car. That's when the man spoke. "Hey, you got a minute?" Cole stopped. He turned and looked at the man. "What's up?" he said, trying to sound casual. "I'm broke down," the man said. His voice was flat, calm in a way that felt off. "My phone's dead. I just need to use yours for a second, make one call." Cole hesitated. He'd been in situations like this before. It happens on road trips. But something about this felt wrong. The man hadn't walked toward the store to ask for help. He'd watched Cole. He'd waited until the pump clicked off, until the exact moment Cole had one foot ready to get in the car before saying anything. "Sorry, man, I can't," Cole said.
He got in the car and locked the door. The man didn't move. He stood there as Cole started the engine. He stood there as Cole put the car in drive. He was still standing there, in the same spot, perfectly still, as Cole pulled out of the lot and back onto the road. Cole watched him in the rearview mirror until the gas station disappeared behind a curve. He drove for about 10 minutes before he pulled over on the side of the road to calm down. His hands were shaking, and he wasn't entirely sure why. He didn't have a concrete reason to be afraid. The man had asked to borrow a phone. Lots of people asked to borrow phones. But here's the thing that sealed it for Cole. When he pulled back onto the highway and got his breathing under control, he passed a rest area about 2 miles up the road. There was a payphone there, one of those old blue ones mounted on a post under a yellow light. He saw it as he drove past. If that man had really needed to make a phone call, the rest area was 2 miles from where he was standing. He could have walked there in under an hour. And if his car was truly broken down, he could have asked the attendant inside to call a tow truck from the store's landline. But instead, he'd waited in the shadows. He'd watched, and he'd waited for the exact moment Cole was alone and about to leave before making his move. Cole got home that night and sat in his car in the driveway for a long time before going inside. He never found out who that man was. He never went back to find out. And to this day, whenever he fills up at night, he parks where he can see every other car on the lot. Every single one.
Story 2. The Attendant Who Saved Her Life. Donna is a nurse, and like most nurses, she's used to long, exhausting shifts that blur into one another. The night this happened, she was driving home from a double shift, 16 hours at the hospital, and she was running on fumes in every sense of the word. It was around 2 in the morning when she pulled into a 24-hour gas station just outside the town where she lived. She'd stopped there dozens of times before. Familiar place, bright lights. A young guy named Pete usually worked the overnight shift, and he always waved at her when she came through. This night, she pulled up, got out, and started pumping. She was so tired that she was basically on autopilot, standing at the pump, staring at nothing, just waiting for the numbers to tick up. She barely noticed when another car pulled in on the other side of her pump island. It was a white pickup truck, newer model. The driver got out and started pumping, and Donna barely glanced at him. She was too tired. She just wanted to get home. What she didn't notice, what she couldn't have noticed because she wasn't paying attention, was that the man had glanced at her the moment he got out of his truck. He looked at her car, looked at her, and then looked around the lot to see if there was anyone else there. There wasn't. Donna's car and his truck were the only ones on the lot. But Pete had noticed. Pete, the overnight attendant, had seen all of it from behind the counter through the big plate glass window. He'd seen the way the man had scanned the parking lot. He'd seen the way the man had parked, not at an empty pump, but at the one directly behind Donna's car, even though the lot was empty and he could have parked anywhere. And he'd seen the man reach back into his truck cab and tuck something into the waistband of his jeans before walking toward the pumps. Pete didn't hesitate. He picked up the store's phone, the landline behind the register, and he dialed 911 before anything else had happened. He told the dispatcher his address and said there was a suspicious male on the lot who appeared to be armed and was positioning himself near a lone female customer. Then he did something that Donna still calls the bravest thing anyone has ever done for her. He walked out from behind the counter, out the front door of the store, and called out to her across the parking lot. "Ma'am! Hey, ma'am! Sorry to bother you. I think your card got declined. Can you come inside for a sec?" Her card hadn't declined. Pete made it up on the spot. But Donna, being tired and not wanting a confrontation, pulled her nozzle out and walked toward the store without thinking twice.
The moment she stepped inside, Pete locked the front door. "Hey, what are you—" she started. "Just stay inside," Pete said quietly, nodding toward the window. "I called the cops. They're on their way." Donna looked through the glass. The man from the truck was still standing at the pumps, and now that she was looking at him properly, now that she wasn't half asleep, she saw it. The way he was standing, the way his right hand kept drifting back to his hip, the way he kept glancing at the store door. He stood there for about 2 minutes. Then a set of headlights appeared on the road, not a police cruiser, just a random car pulling in to get gas, and the man from the truck suddenly walked very quickly back to his vehicle and drove away, fast. Police arrived about 4 minutes later. They ran the plate on the truck. Donna never found out exactly what the man's history was. Pete told her later that the officers hadn't told him much, but she was told that they wanted to speak with him. She asked Pete afterward why he'd acted so quickly, why he hadn't waited to see if anything actually happened. He looked at her and said, "Because by the time something happens, it's already too late." Donna cried in her car on the way home that night, not from fear exactly, but from the strange, disorienting feeling of realizing how close things can come without you ever knowing. She still stops at that gas station. She always goes inside to say hi to Pete.
Story 3. What was in the bathroom? This one was sent to me by a guy named Trevor. He was 19 at the time and was on his way back from a camping trip with 2 friends. They'd been out in the woods for a few days, and by the time they reached civilization, Trevor was absolutely desperate to use a real bathroom. They stopped at a gas station off a rural highway, one of those sparse stretches of road in the Midwest where there's just nothing for miles. The gas station was open, but barely. The parking lot was cracked and weedy, the paint's peeling. One of the 2 outside lights was dead, leaving half the lot in darkness. Trevor's friends waited in the car while he ran inside. The attendant, an older woman who barely looked up from her magazine, waved him toward the back when he asked about the bathroom. The bathroom was around the side of the building, accessed through an exterior door. It was a single-stall, unisex bathroom, just a toilet, a sink, a flickering light, and that particular smell of a gas station bathroom that you just have to accept. Trevor went in, locked the door, and did his business. He was washing his hands when he heard it. Breathing. Slow, steady, deliberate breathing, coming from inside the bathroom. But he was alone. The stall door was open. He could see there was no one in it. The sound seemed to be coming from the corner near the paper towel dispenser, but there was nothing there, just a wall. Trevor turned off the faucet and stood completely still. The breathing was still there, even, unhurried, and close, like someone was standing right next to him. His first thought was that it was the ventilation system. Old gas station bathrooms have all kinds of weird sounds from old pipes and vents. He told himself that, and he almost believed it. Then the breathing changed rhythm. It slowed down, and then, after a pause, it came back at a different pace, like whatever was making it had noticed that Trevor had gone still, like it was adjusting, like it was listening. Trevor left. He didn't run. He wanted to run, but his legs went tight and shaky, and the best he could do was walk fast. He came around the side of the building, opened the passenger door, and got in. "Everything okay?" his friend Mikey asked. "Drive. Right now, just drive." Mikey looked at him. "We're not done pumping. Please, man, drive." Mikey pulled the nozzle out without finishing, and they left. Trevor told them what happened as they drove. His friends were skeptical. They offered all the rational explanations, and Trevor agreed with all of them, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling. Here's the part that still bothers him.
About 2 weeks after the trip, Trevor was telling the story to a co-worker, and his co-worker said something that made him go cold. "Did you check the ceiling?" Trevor hadn't. He'd never thought to look up. The bathroom was one of those older ones with drop ceiling tiles, the removable kind. And the co-worker pointed out that people have been known to hide in drop ceilings of gas station bathrooms. It's not common, but it happens. Trevor went quiet for the rest of that workday. He doesn't know what was in that bathroom. It might have been nothing: bad pipes, overactive imagination, the jittery paranoia that comes with being overtired on a long road trip. He tells himself that all the time. But he also tells himself he's never going into a gas station bathroom alone at night again. And so far, he's kept that promise.
Story 4. The Same Face Twice. This story comes from a woman named Renee. She was 29 at the time and worked as a long-haul courier. She drove her own vehicle, not a rig, and made deliveries across a wide region, usually with packages that had to be delivered in person. Most of her routes were fine, routine, but one particular run took her through a part of the state she wasn't familiar with, and it's a run she still thinks about. It was late afternoon going into evening when she stopped at a gas station to fill up and grab coffee. The station was on the edge of a small town, 2 pump islands, a diner attached to the side, a couple of semi-trucks parked along the back. Normal enough. She filled up, went inside, got her coffee, paid. As she was walking back to her car, she noticed a man sitting in a gray sedan parked along the side of the building. He was just sitting there, engine off, staring forward. She glanced at him. He was probably in his mid-40s, heavy-set, short gray hair, wearing a blue flannel shirt. She noticed him the way you notice anyone who's just kind of there, and then she forgot about him the way you forget about everyone you pass in a gas station parking lot. She got in her car, pulled back onto the highway, and drove. About 45 minutes later, she pulled off the highway again, this time at a larger truck stop to use the bathroom. She found a parking spot, got out, went inside, used the bathroom, bought a bag of chips, and walked back out. And there was the gray sedan, parked 3 spots down from her car. Same car, she was almost certain. Same scuff on the front bumper. Same parking sticker in the lower left corner of the back windshield. Renee stopped walking. She stood there and stared at the car. After a moment, the driver's door opened and the man in the blue flannel shirt got out. He looked at her. His expression didn't change, no recognition, no reaction, just a flat, neutral look. He walked past her into the truck stop without a word. Now it's possible, it's entirely possible, that this was just coincidence, 2 people leaving the same small gas station and ending up at the same truck stop 45 minutes later. It happens. Roads funnel people into the same places. But Renee is a courier. She spends her life on the road. She knows how timing works on highways. And the fact that she had stopped for 10 minutes at the first station, then driven 45 minutes at highway speed, and yet this man, who she'd watched sitting still in his car when she left, had ended up at the same truck stop at almost exactly the same time, meant that either he'd driven very fast to catch up to her, or he'd been behind her the entire time and had gotten off when she got off. She didn't use the bathroom at the truck stop. She got back in her car and drove. For the next hour, she watched the rear-view mirror. She changed lanes constantly to see what the traffic behind her did. She took an exit she didn't need to take, drove around a gas station she didn't need to stop at, and got back on the highway.
all just to see if she was being followed. She never spotted the gray sedan again, whether that means he was gone or just far enough back that she couldn't see him, she doesn't know. She called her dispatch when she finally reached her delivery location and told them she was spooked and needed a minute. They gave her one. She sat in a parking lot in the early evening and didn't move for 15 minutes. She still drives that route, but she doesn't stop at those same gas stations anymore. She takes a different exit and adds 20 minutes to her drive. 20 minutes, she says, is a small price to pay.
Story 5. Don't take the free candy. This one was submitted by a father named Garrett. He was traveling with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, just the two of them on a long drive to visit family. His wife had flown ahead, and Garrett was driving because Lily had always been afraid of flying. They stopped at a gas station in the late afternoon, somewhere in rural Georgia, the kind of place surrounded by pine trees where there's nothing for miles, and the only sign of civilization is the faded billboard for the station about a mile before you reach it. Garrett got out to pump gas while Lily stayed in the back seat, watching something on a tablet. He leaned through the window to check on her. She waved at him without looking up, and he went to handle the pump. He was mid-fill when a woman came out of the convenience store. She was probably in her 50s, casually dressed, nothing out of the ordinary. She walked over to the car and knocked on the rear passenger window. Garrett looked up immediately. He was about 30 feet away. The woman smiled at Lily through the glass and held something up, a piece of candy, still in its wrapper. She said something. Garrett couldn't hear exactly what, but from the gesture she was offering to give Lily the candy. Lily looked up from her tablet, looked at the woman, and then looked over at Garrett like she was asking permission. Garrett walked over, not jogging, walking, but very purposefully. "Can I help you?" he said. The woman turned to him, still smiling. "Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to scare anyone. I just love kids. I've got grandkids about her age. I picked this up inside and thought she might like it." She held out the candy. It was a well-known brand, still sealed in the original wrapper, completely normal on the surface. Garrett looked at her. He looked at the candy. He looked at his daughter, who was now watching both of them with open curiosity. "That's really kind of you," he said, "but we're all good, thanks." The woman nodded, still smiling, and walked back to the store. Garrett finished pumping, and they left. In the car, Lily asked him why he'd said no to the candy. Garrett thought for a second. "Because we don't take things from people we don't know, even if it seems nice." It was the same rule he'd always taught her, and he'd meant it as a simple reminder. But here's what happened later that pushed this story out of the back of his mind. About an hour up the road, Lily fell asleep. Garrett, driving in silence, found himself replaying the interaction at the gas station. There was something about it that was nagging at him, and he couldn't place it for a while. Then he realized. The woman had come out of the convenience store, but when Garrett had looked over at the sound of the knock on the window, she'd been standing at his car, not walking toward it. She'd been there almost immediately after coming out of the store, meaning she'd walked directly, purposefully to their specific car. There were 3 other cars on that lot. She had come to his car. She had gone to the window where his 8-year-old daughter was sitting alone. She had not tried to wave Garrett over or acknowledged him until he walked toward her. She doesn't know what she intended. Maybe she really was just a friendly grandmother with a pocket full of wrapped candy. Maybe there was nothing sinister about any of it.
but he drove the rest of the way to his family's house with his hands tight on the wheel. And when he got there and hugged his wife, he held on a little longer than usual.
Story 6. The Night Shift That Went Wrong. This one is from Eddie's own experience working at a gas station. He was 20 at the time, working the night shift at a station in a mid-sized town in the Pacific Northwest. It was a job he'd taken to help pay for community college, and for the most part, it was quiet. Regulars coming in for cigarettes, truckers stopping for energy drinks, the occasional drunk person stumbling in for chips. It was quiet until the night a man walked in who didn't want to buy anything. It was around 3 in the morning on a Wednesday, the deadest stretch of the week according to Eddie. He was restocking the refrigerated section in the back of the store when he heard the bell above the door. He came around the aisle to greet the customer and stopped. The man was standing just inside the door, not moving. He was wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up, jeans and boots. He had his hands stuffed in the front pocket of the hoodie. He wasn't looking at the shelves. He was looking at the register. Then he looked at Eddie. Eddie had been told in training that if he ever felt unsafe, he had the right to ask a customer to leave. He'd also been told that the register had very little cash in it, they did drops throughout the night, and that the security camera was recording. And he'd been told that if anyone ever tried to rob him, his job was simple. Give them what they want, don't be a hero, and call the police once they're gone. He remembered all of that, and yet... The man took a step forward. "You here alone?" he said. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Eddie didn't answer right away. He'd been taught not to lie, but also not to confirm information that could be used against him. "What can I help you with tonight?" he said. The man looked at the register again, then back at Eddie. "Just you in here?" "Is there something I can help you find?" Eddie said again, louder this time. The man seemed to register that Eddie wasn't going to answer his question. He tilted his head slightly, just looked at Eddie for what felt like a very long moment. Then he turned and walked back out the door. Eddie stood completely still until he heard the sound of a car starting and pulling away. Then he went behind the counter, sat down on the little stool back there, and didn't move for 3 minutes. He called his manager, who told him he'd done the right thing and that these things happen sometimes and not to worry about it. Eddie wasn't worried exactly. He was something else, a hollowed-out, shaky feeling that wasn't quite fear and wasn't quite okay. He worked the rest of his shift. But here's the part that got under his skin in the weeks that followed. He started looking back at the store's security footage from that night. He had access to it as an employee. And when he found the footage from the parking lot camera, the one that faced outward toward the pumps in the street, he saw that the man's car had been parked across the street, not in the lot, across the street with the headlights off. It had been there for 40 minutes before the man came inside. 40 minutes of watching the store, of waiting, of watching Eddie work through the plate glass windows, alone in the fluorescent light at 3 in the morning. Eddie gave 2 weeks' notice the following Monday. He says he doesn't regret it. Story 7. The Wrong Turn. Priya was 26 and new to driving long distances alone. She'd recently moved from the city to a town about 3 hours away for a new job, and she was still figuring out the routes.
One weekend, she drove back to visit her family, and on the way home, it was around 10 at night. Her GPS rerouted her due to a highway closure and sent her down a state road she'd never been on. The road was dark and winding, cutting through forest for miles. She passed almost no other cars. When her gas light came on, she felt a cold jolt of anxiety. She hadn't thought to fill up before the detour. She was relieved when she saw the gas station sign about 5 miles up the road. The place was small, one pump island, a single-room store, a flickering yellow light above the door. The lot was empty when she pulled in. She got out and started the pump. The night was very quiet, just the hiss of the gas, the chirp of insects, the occasional creak of the trees. She kept her keys in her hand and stood close to her car. The door to the convenience store opened and a man came out. He was short, older, wearing coveralls, and he nodded at her. "Evening," he said. "Hi," she said. He walked around to the side of the building without another word, and she heard the sound of a door opening and closing back there, probably a storage room or a bathroom. She exhaled, just an attendant doing his rounds. A minute later, the pump clicked off. She got the receipt, got back in the car, and headed back out to the road. She drove for about 20 minutes before something made her check her phone. She had a text from her mom. Her mom had tried calling twice while she had bad reception, and the text read, "Baby, call me when you get this. Your cousin posted something on Facebook about that road you might be taking. Something about that gas station. Call me." Priya called her mom right then, pulling off onto the gravel shoulder. Her cousin, it turned out, had seen a local news story shared in a community Facebook group. A gas station on that stretch of state road had been flagged by county police after multiple women had reported that the attendant had been copying down their license plate numbers and looking up their registration information. He'd used that information to track down personal addresses. Police were asking anyone who'd stopped there recently to contact them. Priya sat on the side of that dark road for a moment, processing this. She'd given the man nothing. She hadn't gone into the store. She hadn't spoken to him other than a one-word greeting. She hadn't left her window down. But her license plate had been right there, 2 feet from where he'd walked when he'd come out of the store. She called her mom back and told her she was fine. She drove home without stopping. She called the county sheriff's non-emergency line the next morning and gave her her license plate number and the time she'd been at the station. The deputy she spoke with thanked her and told her to let them know if she received any unexpected contact. She hasn't yet, but she checks her surroundings a little more carefully now, and whenever she stops at an unfamiliar gas station, she keeps her back to the plate.
Story 8. He wasn't there when we left. This one comes from 2 brothers, Theo and Danny, who were 24 and 21 at the time. They were driving across the country, one of those classic road trip ideas that sounds great when you plan it and becomes exhausting about day 3. By the time this happened, they were on day 4, somewhere in the high desert of New Mexico, and they were tired, bored, and riding on caffeine. They stopped at a gas station that was attached to a diner, the kind of combo that you find out in the desert, because if you're going to make money in the middle of nowhere, you'd better give people more than one reason to stop. They pulled in around 9 at night, filled up, decided to eat at the diner because they were sick of drive-thrus. They were in the diner for about an hour. Decent food, slow service, a couple of locals at the counter who talked to the waitress the whole time. Normal, comfortable. They paid, tipped, and walked back out to the lot. Danny reached the car first. He stopped. "Hey," he said to Theo,
Wasn't that guy there when we got here? He was pointing to a man sitting on the low concrete barrier at the edge of the parking lot. The man was facing away from them, looking out toward the highway, sitting very still. Theo tried to remember. He honestly wasn't sure. They'd parked and gone straight into the diner. He hadn't paid much attention to the lot. "Maybe," said Theo. "So what?" "We were in there for like an hour," Danny said quietly, "and he's just sitting there in the same spot." They both looked at the man. He hadn't moved. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't eating or drinking anything. He was just sitting on that concrete barrier with his back to them, perfectly still. "Come on," Theo said, and they got in the car. As Theo started the engine, Danny turned around and looked through the rear window at the man. Still there, still not moving. Theo pulled forward, then swung around toward the exit, and as he did, his headlights swept across the barrier, and for just a second the man was lit up. He turned his head toward the light, just slightly, not all the way, not like a person turning to look at a car, just a small involuntary tilt, the kind of movement that made it look less like he was watching the headlights and more like he was listening to the engine. Neither of them said anything until they were back on the highway. "That was weird," Danny finally said. "Yeah," Theo agreed. They drove in silence for a few minutes. "What do you think he was doing?" asked Danny. Theo shook his head. "Don't know." "How long do you think he'd actually been there?" They thought about it. The diner, the hour inside, the fact that he'd been there when they arrived, the fact that he hadn't moved the entire time. "Too long," Theo said. "He'd been there too long." They didn't talk about it much after that. It was one of those things you can't really explain and can't really prove was anything. A man sitting in a parking lot. That's all it was, technically. But here's what Danny told me. A few weeks after the trip, he was telling the story to a friend, and the friend asked an obvious question. Was the man's car in the lot? Danny thought about it. He thought back to pulling in, parking, walking into the diner. He tried to remember the other cars. He couldn't remember seeing a car near the barrier where the man was sitting. He couldn't remember seeing a car that obviously belonged to that man anywhere on the lot. No one walks out to the high desert. He doesn't know what that means. He's not sure he wants to. Story 9. The Last Customer. I want to end tonight with this one, because out of everything I've heard, this one is the hardest to shake. It comes from a woman named Vera, and she shared it with me through a message that took her, by her own account, 3 attempts to actually finish writing. She said it wasn't because it was difficult emotionally. It was because every time she got close to the end, she started doubting whether she should share it at all. She changed her mind and sent it anyway, and I'm glad she did. Vera was 32 and lived in a small town in West Virginia. She was driving home late from a friend's get-together. Not drunk, she was clear about that. She'd stopped drinking early in the evening and had been drinking water for hours. She was just tired. It was after midnight, and the back roads between her friend's house and her own were dark and winding, the kind you have to know well to drive confidently. She stopped at a gas station she'd been using her whole life, literally her whole life. She remembered her parents stopping there when she was a little girl. The owners had changed a few times over the decades, but it was always there, a fixed point. She pulled in and saw the lights were on inside, but there was no one at the pumps. She got out, swiped her card, and started filling. It was quiet.
The kind of quiet that only happens at that hour in a small town. No highway noise, no distant music, just the soft sound of wind and the mechanical hum of the pump. The door to the store opened, and a girl came out. She was maybe 16, 17, light blue hoodie, jeans, sneakers, brown hair pulled back. She walked toward the pump island and stopped a few feet from Vera's car. She looked at Vera. "Excuse me," the girl said. "Could you give me a ride? I need to get home." Vera looked at her. "Where do you live?" The girl gave a street name. It was one Vera knew, maybe 10, 12 minutes from where they were standing. Vera was a cautious person, but she was also, at her core, kind. And this was a young girl, alone at a gas station after midnight, in a small town where most people knew each other. "Okay," Vera said. "Get in." She finished pumping while the girl stood there, then they both got in the car. Vera asked if she was okay. The girl said she was fine, just needed to get home. Vera asked how she'd ended up at the gas station. The girl said she'd been walking and stopped because her feet hurt. It was a perfectly normal conversation. The girl was polite, seemed fine, made eye contact, asked Vera a couple of questions about herself. Nothing strange at all. Vera pulled up to the address the girl had given. It was a house on a residential street, dark the way all the houses were dark at that hour. Porch light on, one lit window upstairs. "Is this it?" Vera asked. "Yes," the girl said. "Thank you so much. You're so nice." "Of course," Vera said. "Get inside safe." The girl got out of the car. Vera waited until she saw her walk up the porch steps, and then she pulled away. She drove home, went inside, and went to bed. 2 days later, Vera was at a neighbor's house for coffee. The neighbor had lived on that street her whole life and knew every family in the area. Vera mentioned in passing that she'd given a girl a ride from the gas station the other night, just making conversation. "What did she look like?" the neighbor asked. Vera described her, light blue hoodie, brown hair, 16 or 17. She gave the street and house number. The neighbor set down her coffee cup. "Vera," she said slowly, "you know what family lives in that house." "I don't think I know them personally," Vera said. The neighbor looked at her for a long moment. "There's only one person living in that house. Harold. He's in his 80s. He lost his wife 2 years ago, and both his kids moved away. He lives alone. There's no teenage Pearl." Vera didn't say anything. "And," the neighbor continued carefully, "there was a girl who used to live in that neighborhood a long time ago, before you would have moved here. She used to walk everywhere. Everyone knew her. She died in an accident on that road out by the gas station when she was 17. Vera drove to that house later that day. She sat outside it for a long time. It was exactly as the neighbor had described, an old man's house, clearly. No signs of a teenager, no sneakers by the door, no evidence at all of a young girl. She drove to the gas station. She went inside and asked the attendant, a young man she half recognized, if he'd seen a girl there 2 nights ago, late around midnight. Brown hair, blue hoodie. He shook his head. "I was here till close," he said. "I don't remember anyone like that." Vera stood there for a moment. "Was the store locked that night, after midnight?" He nodded. "We close at midnight. Lock the doors." The girl had come out of a locked store. Vera got back in her car. She drove home. She sat in her driveway for a very long time, thinking about the conversation in the car. Perfectly normal, friendly, real feeling in every possible way. Thinking about the porch steps and the soft sound of footsteps on wood. She never heard the door open. she never heard the door. Gas stations. Most of us pass through them dozens of times a year without a second thought. We pump our gas, we grab our coffee, we get back on the road. But tonight, 9 people reminded us that not every stop goes the way it's supposed to, that the person watching you from the shadows might not be what they seem, that sometimes the most dangerous moment of your night is the one you almost don't notice. Drive safe, pay attention, and next time you pull into a gas station late at night, look around before you get out. You never know who might already be watching.